Hello everyone, welcome to the very last Hacktoberfest Help Desk. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are new to the show, well, you've missed it all now. We've had 30 days of it and you've missed it all. But you've turned up just in time to catch the very last one, so thank you for joining us. The Hacktoberfest Help Desk was your resource to get you all the tips and tricks you needed during Hacktoberfest to land those PRs. And we've got one last hurrah before Hacktoberfest finishes. So you lucky viewer, have about 38 hours, I think, now before Hacktoberfest ends. And I hope you get across that finish line. If there's anything we could do to help, you can check back the early episodes, find some tips and tricks. But what we're going to be doing in this show is a little bit different. We're going to be diving again into the app that powers it all, the DigitalOcean Hacktoberfest app, with current maintainers and past maintainers. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'll bring our guests on for that in just a moment. But before that, a couple of programming notes. My programming list is a little bit shorter because I don't have to show the schedule because there's nothing else on the schedule. But for those of you who are in the chat, our usual reminders that the chat is all yours. You can ask questions anytime you want. I see a lot of regular faces. Hey Shreyas, hey Nicholas. Hey, I forgot to start my undervolt. I haven't. My undervolt is started. Thank you for reminding me of that great username. Hey Hugh, hey Internet Ramen. The chat is all yours. Ask questions as we go. As I said, we've got two very experienced maintainers of this app coming on, so it's a good time to ask questions about how it all works. If you want to post a link, the last time I have to warn you of this, if you want to post a link, mention me at RaisedDevs, let me know you're going to post a link, otherwise the moderation bot will ban you, so let me know before you do it and we'll make sure that no one gets banned in the last show. Or maybe we should try and get everyone banned in the last show. How should this work? I'm not entirely sure. So although I don't have a schedule to show you now, we will be back with Hacktoberfest content. Sorry, we'll be back with new content after Hacktoberfest. We don't entirely know our schedule yet. We will likely be at least 2 times a week. It definitely won't be 3 times a day. But if you want to keep up to date on when we do have that new schedule, you can of course find it on the twitch.tv RaisedDevs schedule page. We'll update that as soon as we know. And you can also follow us on Twitter at RaisedDevs to get the news as soon as we have it. We will make sure we tweet as soon as we know our new schedule and as soon as we get our next lot of guests lined up. I think our first show is going to be live programming with John. I will tell you that much. I don't know when or how. Probably a day beginning with T, because that's the days that the internet likes best. We'll let you know. Other than that, if you haven't heard of Raise.dev already, somehow, we are a service to help you level up in your developer career, whether you're trying to get your first dev job after a bootcamp or after a career change, or you're trying to get the experience you need to get a promotion, to get a raise, to jump from mid-level to senior, to become an engineering lead. Whatever it is, we are here to help you with our expert coaches. You can sign up completely for free whilst we're in early access, and we'll match you with one of our coaches who will help you get the experience you need to make that transition in your career. We already have a question about that, which unfortunately I refreshed, so that question has gone away. I believe it was from Fan of Cilantro, who said that they'd signed up, they'd had their kickoff call, and it's been a little while and they haven't been matched yet. Do not worry, we are in early access, as I've said and as the site says, and we had a really great response to our early access, and so we've just finished the kickoff calls, and now we're working out how to best match everyone with a coach. Thank you for your patience during this time as we do that. We will be in touch as soon as we can. We're doing our best to make sure that you get matched with a coach that works great for you. And as I've mentioned a couple times in the stream, we're also onboarding lots of new coaches all the time. Chris is one of our coaches, will be on here soon, so maybe able to correct me in what I've just said. But anyway, without further ado, God, the chat, there's so many people redeeming their internet money in the chat that I can't even look at it. Let's just bring on the guests. Please welcome Matt and Chris to the stream. Hello, folks. How are you doing?
Hello. Hi.
Awesome. Let's start with intros. Matt, let's start with you, Matt, because people have met you 3 times now, so they should know who you are, but we'll go quick intro to Matt.
Hi,
So Chris,
I'm Matt Cowley, IPv4 community platform manager at DigitalOcean and maintainer of CDNJS at Cloudflare. I look after DigitalOcean's community and I work on things like Hacktoberfest.
Wonderful. And Chris, I'll leave your lower third down while you're speaking so it doesn't cover your face. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Chris. I am a senior developer and developer coach with Raise. I've been with Raise since the beginning. And right now I am actively working on the MLH Fellowship as well.
Wonderful. Awesome. The MLH Fellowship we've spoken about a couple of times. We had Will Russell on. Really wonderful program. You can check back in our history if you want to look at that. But I guess to jump in to the context of what we're doing today, Chris, I said you've been with Raise for a long time, and in a time past during the pilot program, which you've heard a little bit about on this show, y'all were working on a very exciting project. Would you like to tell us a little bit about I guess where it all started with Hacktoberfest and Raise?
Where it all started with Hacktoberfest and Raise, yeah. So So this was in our first iteration of Raise, where basically we hired 5 developers, and they were essentially, we were on site in an office, like emulating a real like engineering team as the best that we can. And so what we were doing in this portion was accepting basically commercial work. So we were operating somewhat like a traditional software consultancy business. And we were basically charging clients money and using that to pay some of our early devs. Right. And it was a great experience. And basically, we purposely helped or hired devs that were like needed that experience or could best benefit from the experience. So everyone was kind of underqualified for the work we were doing, but our goal was to like basically put them, like provide just a ton of support and get them like up to that, level them up.
Awesome. Which we've heard about this, and you in particular a lot from those past fellows. We've had Secret on the show, we've had Ching Ching on the show, and we've had Frida on the show, and all of them mentioned pairing with you at different points. And one particular thing that all 3 of them organically mentioned was someone would be working on something, and suddenly you would summon everyone together to look at something and give them like an in-depth dive into something that was like someone was struggling with or something like that. They will recount that very fondly. So I guess to go on a brief tangent before we dive into Hacktoberfest app itself, we've heard a lot about like your pairing practice. Do you want to talk a little bit about like why you think pair programming is a valuable way to learn?
Pair programming, yeah. Well, let me mention, just to kind of rephrase that question just a little bit. I think that working with someone like a mentor or kind of almost like a traditional like apprenticeship, sometimes to describe it, apprenticeship, I said, is like a really amazing way to learn, because it's really just that hands-on software and development. And you know, there's curriculum-based things, or can be somewhat trivial and somewhat out of the actual context of the real world. And when you're actually in the real world, well, then you're in the real world, and like you're getting that that good experience there. And there's a ton of just things that everybody knows that we don't know that we know.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
That makes sense. It's sometimes people call this tribal knowledge.
Right.
And so it's like little things like that can oftentimes be like the best things to teach. And like I found that like just jumping into like some of the context around things is some of just things that people appreciate the most as well.
That's awesome. I will just go on a brief tangent to mention the chat are already mocking me because I have a terrible habit of nodding along and saying right as the guests speak, and I will keep that to a minimum in our last stream. Thank you very much. I forgot to start my undervolt. Okay, awesome, cool. So let's get into it. So what we came here to do today is take another look at the Hacktoberfest app. We'd done that previously with Matt about a week ago, and so we were John came up with the idea when he heard that you would be on the show with us, Chris, of bringing Matt back again and doing, a past look back at it because you had worked on it previously, and obviously Matt's been working on it this year. So what I think would be great to do is to bring up the app, bring up your screen, and let y'all have at it. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
Perfect. All right. It should be on the screen. So with Matt, we dived into it a little bit last time. In particular, we looked at the pull request model, I think was what we were looking at. Was that right, Matt?
Yep.
Awesome. Where would you start us in? I guess, do you want to explain what this app actually does for Hacktoberfest? So that'd be a good place to start.
Should I take that or Matt?
Whichever one of you feels like you want to do it.
I mean,
it's the last show. It's all chaos.
I can give a really kind of top level
both at the same time. Yeah.
How this works. The Hacktoberfest app runs Hacktoberfest completely. It is a monolith app. So it does our website, but it also does all the back-end pull request tracking that's needed to actually, make Hacktoberfest run. It's a Ruby on Rails application with a load of, jobs and workers in the background that do all that tracking for us. So if you go to hacktoberfest.digitalocean.com, the pages you're being served there are this Ruby on Rails app. But equally, all the emails you're getting telling you you've won or whatever are the Ruby on Rails app in the background chugging through your pull requests. So that's what this app does at a really high level.
Awesome. Cool. That makes sense. And obviously, lots of people in our chat who I recognize a lot of those names in the Hacktoberfest Discord have been using this app a lot to check on the status of their pull requests and asking lots of questions about those statuses evolving. So where should we start in kind of getting a look at this app and getting, I guess, understanding a little bit how it works? And Chris, how long has it been since you were in the innards of the app?
It was really like the end of Hacktoberfest last year.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I assume the starting point or the entry point for the app won't have changed too much.
I hope so.
So Chris is driving the screen share, which I've now realized, given the changes, may be interesting. So Chris, where would you normally start when you're diving into this app?
Okay, yeah, sure. So where would I start? So let's look. Well, if this was a new project, I would certainly start. I would always look at the gem file as a place to start, just to look at what dependencies are used. And if I was just scanning this as someone who doesn't basically know what it does already, I see a number of gems that I recognize. Faraday for HTTP connections, really OctoKit. This is the GitHub API. Gem Puma for the server, Sidekick. Okay, so we have background jobs. Pry, great. State machine. Okay, that's interesting.
We saw the state machine last time. Actually, that was what Matt took us around.
I took you to one of the state machines.
Yeah. Okay. The state machine. The state machine for pull requests.
Yeah.
Sure.
Awesome.
Which I think is possibly new this year. I can't remember. Chris, did you have one last year?
I don't recall. We definitely had one on the user model last year. We might have had one.
The pull request one might be the one I added this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be honest, that entire model could be basically new this year.
Yeah. We have. I'm really happy to see also just a lot that this application was Dockerized since the last time I've seen it.
Yeah.
Which is great. There's kind of a couple things in terms of just running Ruby on Rails apps. Oftentimes we end up teaching this pattern called scripts to rule them all, which I think probably was talked about on the stream a little bit. But that's a pattern for basically running it well on your host machine with all the setup scripts, handling that for you. Docker works well, of course, as well.
Awesome.
My preference is actually generally not using Docker and developing on the host machine because it tends to be a little bit faster and a little bit nicer, and it's easy for me. But yeah.
So I think we Dockerize it this year just so that the development setup is now identical to how it's deployed, because that also changed from last year. I mean, if we want to get into that, last year this was deployed on some droplets basically. We rolled it all on our own. This year it's in our internal Kubernetes system, so trying to replicate that locally was probably quite important for us this year.
Was there something that drove that change? So I guess one of the
security, Joe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so is that the sort of stuff I want to get to, that last year being built by kind of external contractors, right, with the situation, and there was a certain set of requirements last year, and I'd be really interested to hear, Chris, how many of those requirements came out of DigitalOcean already, and how many were stuff that y'all dealt with in some kind of discovery session, discovery period, and obviously what has changed over the years and the factors that have led to any changes that Matt has implemented, or the things that Matt is talking about. So I don't really know where to start with that, because that could be a whole bunch of stuff. So let's start with the development process, Chris. When you built this, did DigitalOcean come to you with a spec of what they wanted, or the functionality they wanted this app to do, or did you start with examining what Hacktoberfest was and how it worked?
So there was a couple changes that were definitely in a spec. It wasn't a fully flushed out spec, in terms of a detailed spec. But one of the things that we knew going into it was we knew we wanted to open source it. That was a big thing, and we also knew that in the years previous it wasn't tied to a user. I think is what it was, or there was no heads up way for participants in Hacktoberfest to go in and see their current status, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was a big thing, and one of the big reasons, from my understanding, for why this was basically undertaken, this whole project.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that screen where you log in and you can see I have 2 out of 4 pull requests submitted, right? That's basically was one of the biggest key like drivers and motivators between for writing this app.
Yeah, I can give. I mean, I wasn't doing Hacktoberfest. Well, I was a participant in Hacktoberfest in 2018, so I can't give too much context on that jump to 2019.
Yeah.
But in terms of the profile page, in 2018, your profile was public. It did kind of exist, but anyone could look at anyone's profile. So I guess, the big change in 2019 was that that's completely private and authenticated. And that's where we now show the coupon codes as opposed to firing them off in an email.
Right. Okay. Yep. Great. That makes sense. And so that's public. So then I guess one of the big changes, something that comes to mind immediately is that in the application, how it is after 2019, we're doing the GitHub OAuth dance, right? So we can get that private information on behalf of individual users. And that's when you authorize the app with GitHub, right? And so I assume that wasn't done in 2018.
Right. So that change, obviously having everyone's profile page publicly accessible, there are interesting network effects to that, being able to see people's progress through Hacktoberfest. Did you feel that there wasn't a good fit for what you were trying to achieve, or was that just straight up a privacy concern that you made that change, Matt?
I can't really speak to that decision because that was definitely
that was before you joined.
Prior to me being involved, really.
Yeah. Cool.
I don't really know. My guess would be it's kind of a bit of a privacy thing, but also just it simplifies the process because it means the transactional emails that are being sent out are far less important. Because I know, as everyone who's ever worked on any application knows, sending emails to people is a pain.
For sure.
So the fact that it's all just on the website now makes it so much easier.
Right. Yeah, and cheaper, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Okay, so we obviously have spoken a little bit, and we did it when you came on the show, and it's been come up a couple times with guest Matt, that obviously one of the big changes this year was to the amount of states that a pull request can be in as part of the spam, and obviously the opt-in, and the whole opt-in situation. We looked at the pull request stuff. Where does the opt-in happen in the app?
So the opt-in happens in that pull request as well.
Cool.
The app doesn't really track repositories at all. So Chris, if you want to dive into the pull request model, within there is going to be
Sorry, Lucas just got themselves banned. Lucas, you're in this chat all the time. Oh, he tried to copy my bio. Okay, that was a mistake.
Yeah, so the topic missing there, you can see there's an in-topic repo method. So that's the opt-in check there, essentially. It's just as part of a pull request, we're checking that the repository has a topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In-topic repo right here.
That's the one. So yeah, we just check that the repository has the Hacktoberfest topic. It's as simple as that.
That is very simple.
Yep.
Nice.
Wonderful. Repository topics.
Yeah.
That will be delegated from the GitHub pull request.
Another method there. Oh, wonderful. Yep. Okay. And this is our object that represents the remote resource there. Right.
Yeah. So that's backed. So the pull request model is backed by the database, an active record. The GitHub pull request model is backed by a GraphQL hash.
Excellent. Yep.
Which I think is basically what you built out last year.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember how things were a year ago, but I think most of this existed already.
Yes. Yep. The GitHub pull request is the JSON or the GraphQL that's returned from GitHub.
Cool. And in terms of building this as a Rails app, and this came up a little bit in our conversation with Matt, that they're thinking now about different technology choices. Did you choose last year? Did you choose a Rails app because that was technology that y'all were proficient in? That's what you were teaching the fellow with the Rails.dev pilot program participants. I can't remember what we're calling them. Was that just because it's the technology that you're most comfortable in, or does that something that came from DigitalOcean? That's to you, Chris.
Okay. Yeah. So I believe that this was discussed. Basically, this was decided collaboratively between Raise and DigitalOcean, and we're both Rails shops, and it
Cool.
just made sense. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
That makes sense to me. I wasn't involved in that decision, but yeah, I was like, Dio Community is a massive Rails app as well, and I think previous Hacktoberfest had been Rails apps as well. So
Right.
yeah, makes sense.
Cool. So you poked a bit around. We looked at the contributing graph at one point, Matt, and saw that you poked a bit
We
around
did.
last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you remember? What your first contribution was?
I don't, but you know, with the magic of GitHub and the fact that we actually preserve the pull requests, I can find out.
Yes. Wow. What 1 year later, it comes back.
Let's see. I've got 4 pages of pull requests here. Christ. My first pull request was on September 25th. Updating the registration mark being used on the Hacktoberfest brand word.
Excellent.
Yes.
Perfect. Wait, so you're updating it from like an R, a TM to an R?
Yeah, basically.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Incredible. Very cool.
I mean, like, for some context, I guess, my contributions last year, last year I was not a developer on the app, per se.
Right.
Yeah.
So, go for it, Chris.
I was going to mention, Matt. I recall you saying last year that you weren't so much a Ruby developer,
No.
and you were, and you were helping us out mostly with UI updates and
Yep.
a lot more on the front end side. Which, by the way, like I really appreciated during that time too. In case I didn't mention that, but yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, my entire Ruby on Rails experience, I mean, my whole Ruby experience is, like, just over a year and a half of working at Dio. I had never touched Ruby before I joined here. And I started work on the community app, and then, started working on Hacktoberfest, and then this year I've somehow become the one that's kind of working on it most.
Yeah. So how's that been? Have you like enjoyed Ruby? Learning it over the last year, and how's it been? Yeah. Cool.
It's like, I don't know, I started most of my development life in Python. And then, I've moved to JavaScript. Most of what I do still is JavaScript. And then Ruby kind of feels like, I don't know, a mix of the two, almost.
Right.
I love the fact that none of them are typed, really. So there's that freedom. But yeah, I don't know, I feel really comfortable in Ruby nowadays, even though I've like got 0 training in it.
Wonderful.
Which I guess goes back to Chris's earlier points about, learning through experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Diving into an app that absolutely explodes with hundreds of thousands of users once a year is a good trial by fire.
Absolutely.
There you go.
So
you want the most motivation, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I have no idea where we should be talking about this app. Y'all are the two that work on it. Where should we go? Take us on a journey.
I don't know, Chris, what do you want to look at? Do you want to look at some problematic things that you had challenges with last year? I thought that'd be quite an interesting thing to look at.
Sure. Yeah. Do you have anything in mind there? Or
I don't really. I don't know. I thought you might have some pains from last year. Things.
Yeah, I remember. I remember some pains. Remembering some pains around the user model and that state machine. Let me see if I can. Just.
Do you want a link to a tree from then?
Oh wow, that's a cool idea.
A tree from then.
There you go.
That's
the last commit from last year. Yeah, in our private chat.
Cool.
Okay, let me see that. Thank you.
I think that is the last commit that was made last year, before we started touching it this year. So it should be a bit more interesting to dive through.
Okay.
I'll drop it in chat as well for those that want to have a look.
Yeah, chat's being chaotic. They're adding me on LinkedIn for some reason.
Okay. All right. So we were looking at. I'd love to see actually a comparison to. This is the old user model, and this is the new one. And
so I think the states are the same. Just I think a lot of the checking around how people go between the states.
There's no way on GitHub to just diff two hashes, is there?
There is.
Oh, we can. That's the compare view. Right?
Oh, nice.
Can you compare an individual file like that?
Yeah, you can. Let's see. Hacktoberfest compare. And then base master, and I can copy this.
Other way
Nothing to
around.
compare. Oh. Yep. Thank you.
Oh, it's gonna be a massive diff.
This comparison is big. We're only showing the most recent 250 commits. Perfect.
Files changed.
Is how long is that going to take to traverse? Oh, not too long. Okay, cool.
There we go.
Nice.
Okay. So what do we have here? We have transition registered waiting. Registered waiting if sufficient waiting or eligible PRs. Okay, that seems like a new method there. Sufficient waiting or eligible PRs. Sufficient eligible PRs. Unless user sufficient eligible PRs.
So were these checks that were added by you, Matt? These
So I'm trying to think how it worked last year now. Because there are minor differences in how users transition state now.
Yeah. There's like further down, line 42 on the left is where you're checking sufficient eligible PRs.
So
back in
I think last year a user went into the waiting state as soon as they had one pull request that was waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Possibly.
Into the waiting state, yeah.
I don't know.
Hashtag app archaeology.
Yeah. By the way, this is a good lesson for why it's great to document your own code. Because when you come back a year later,
and you're put on a Twitch stream.
All right, Chris. If you want to go down this road, yeah, I have a nitpick about the lack of documentation in this repository.
Oh,
there
sure.
is none.
Yeah.
Fight!
When we opened this up in like June, we went, "Oh, there is nothing documented anywhere."
Mm.
Yeah, it was a good month of like just figuring out how it worked.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
I mean, that also, like, again, we spoke on your last show about how Hacktoberfest is a little bit of an unusual app in that, like, it's not even just that no one works on it all year. It's like it is literally dormant for a year. Like, it does nothing.
It's everyone looks at it for like 3 months, and then you could archive this repository for the rest of the year.
Right. Mm-hmm. Hey, user temporarily suspended. Thanks for coming back. This is just a confirmation before you get there. We are live for the last show. Thank you very much. Cool. Okay, so we kind of jumped straight into comparing the diffs. Chris, do you want to talk to us about like what the user model is and how it's working briefly, and then we can look a little bit more at those comparisons again.
Yeah. So what the user model is? So we have. The user model represents a user. I mean, that's where to start, right? And this is basically when you do the OAuth dance with GitHub, when you as soon as you register that, then a user record is created on our end, and you will be put into when that record is created, you will be put into the initial state right here, initial state of new, and so there are. This is a state machine that we're using. So then we have the states. They're not. Yeah, here they are. The states enumerated here, where we have state and then a record there, and then there's events that transition those like from one state to another one. Okay. And a big idea, just in general, with these state machines is that it makes the transitions atomically, right? Which is important in something like that to ensure that the data stays consistent and in sync as well.
Okay, got you. So, sorry, this is me trying to read Ruby. Where are can you show me an example of like where the state of a state transition? I'm seeing state.
So these are the states enumerated, and then you have events.
Oh, got it.
Up here,
perfect.
Right, and the events transition from a state. Basically, the syntax is saying the from and to.
From registered to waiting.
And to the next state, right? Yeah. And then on every, basically, how you have these state blocks here. Well, you can put specific like parts of your model in parts of the state. So validates. This is just like the the active record class method validates that lives there, and so this only applies in this state, right? And then you can also
So the completed one got quite a good example of you could just dump any Ruby code you want in there.
Exactly, right. So this win method only exists in the completed state. Right?
Interesting. Okay, cool. This is something someone just caught on, that there's a state for winning a sticker, which isn't a thing this year, right, Matt?
Yeah, so that was a thing we only did last year. We gifted out stickers to those that hadn't won Hacktoberfest. Yeah, just not a thing we're doing this year, unfortunately.
Cool.
I think the states are all still in the app from it because I never pulled them out. But yeah, we're not doing it this year.
Right. Okay, awesome. Super rad. So for folks who haven't encountered that concept, Chris, when you say the the transitions between the states are atomic, what do you mean?
So it's all or nothing, essentially, is a simple way to explain this. What that means is that if any part of the transition fails, none of it will actually happen. Okay. Which includes all the active record mutations there. And also, if you look down here, there's these hooks here, transition hooks before, after, well, actually, the after transition won't happen. The before, because the before actually happens beforehand. And if this is a function that has side effects, which actually it looks like this is, because it's calling something else, then that won't be perfectly atomic. But the actual state transition, if there's any error on any part of this, it will roll back.
State.
Yes.
Perfect.
Right.
Awesome. Wonderful. Cool. Okay, so that makes sense. Now we understand what the user model is and have seen some of those states. So to go back to the diff between them, one of the things we saw in the diff was that, and I might be interpreting this poorly, but so on the newer side, we have checks for sufficient eligible PRs in a lot more of the transitions, whereas it's only in the one. And I guess that's what you were talking about, Matt, about they just enter a waiting state immediately and then...
Yeah, so there's kind of... I know Chris can correct me because he knows Ruby far better than I. There's kind of two ways to guard a transition happening. Either you can do an if or an unless within the transition itself, which is what I've done on the right-hand side here. Or instead, you could have a state block lower down that has a validate in it. I mean, in both cases, they're doing the same thing, essentially. They're just going to run a check, and if it fails, the transition doesn't happen. I think possibly a lot of my changes this year were just to make that far more verbose, so that I had a bit more confidence in the app. I mean,
I see.
Not to discredit the app at all, because I trust it, but just, especially now we modified so much stuff in terms of the state transitions, just having it so verbosely just made me a bit more confident that I wasn't going to break anything.
Okay, awesome. So we came to this file originally, Chris, because you said you had challenges with the user model. Did we get into that? I was very distracted by chat. Did we talk about what those challenges were?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. I recall there was a few things let's see. There was...
It's these highlights, Nicholas. They're very distracting. Spend all your internet money. No more highlights.
I mean, I know we have one validation right at the top, which is checking a user has a single coupon code.
That's a good validation.
That was one issue we did have last year.
Yeah, right.
We ended up with some entries in the database that had a lock version of 2. And essentially 2 users were being assigned the same coupon code.
Yes, and this was a race condition. Yep. And it was because basically how we were distributing the coupon codes last year was just the next unused coupon code was applied to the most recent winner, right? So we had a table with just all of the different coupon codes that were to be distributed, and as soon as someone transitioned into the completed state,
completed, and then they go straight into winning.
Yeah, right.
So if you look there in that def win, it assigns a coupon, and then
Right.
transition them into state.
Yes, assign coupon and then one. Yeah, that would be a good thing to look into here.
I imagine it's going to call straight back out.
Where
to
is
coupon.
okay? Assigned coupon is delegated to coupon service. Okay, so we can look at that, which is going to be here. Services, coupon service. Okay. Assign coupon unless assigned shirt coupon. Okay. Right. And so that's just calling this return unless user.completed. User association shirt coupon dot replace shirt coupon false.
I have no idea what this is doing. Welcome to GitHub archaeology.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Long story short, there was a race condition last year where the app was there were so many users transitioning at the same time that we ended up trying to assign coupons to 2 people. You were pleased to know that 0 mitigation was done for that this year. We just assigned
it wouldn't
coupons
happen
from the
again.
start.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of the reason why this happened last year was we loaded the coupon codes into the app quite late in the season. So there was a built-up backlog of users that had already won. And this year we put the coupon codes in right from the start, so there was hopefully there was never 2 users winning at exactly the same moment.
So you just avoided the situation. You avoided the situation where that was causing the race conditions, rather than actually fixing the fact the race conditions could happen.
Yes, Joe. That was perfect mitigation strategy. Ignore the problem.
No, which is a great example of, like, we've spoken a couple of times in the show of people who are like technical people in roles where they don't code day to day, and about how in those situations the best way to solve a problem isn't always with code. And this is a great example of how sometimes you can solve the problem in the real world rather than in the code.
Yep.
Amazing.
I think there actually is still an issue open on the repository from last year about the race condition. They just, never got around to addressing it.
Hugh said your code doesn't need to be theoretically correct; it just needs to be practically correct.
Exactly. That is.
That's a good point.
Yeah. That's Hacktoberfest in a sentence, basically.
Nice. Cool.
Like
there's that
like
race
it.
condition. Nice. Opened by
Yep.
John.
We assign coupons in memory. Yep.
Optimistic. What is Rails optimistic locking?
Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to be able to answer that right now.
All good. All good. That was this is from someone who my only exposure to Rails is through snippets of John. So everything is brand new to me.
We should have invited John on this as well, just to have everyone's brains running at this.
Okay, so user models was one thing that you remember being difficult. Was there anything else that you remember being like a chonky part of the app, Chris?
Well, there was a lot to do with actually the deployment of it, because we had load just a high number of simultaneous users at like different points in time, and that was definitely something that was caused some problems, we'll say. And there was a few things with that. Like one of the things we did in response was implemented a caching layer. So whereas if you would refresh originally last year, when you went to your profile page, that would send out a GraphQL query to GitHub every time you hit that page. And we used a Faraday HTTP cache to basically cache the response for GitHub, and I think we just cached it for like 1 minute. So so that response, if you refresh the page multiple times, it wouldn't reload. And just doing that, like because I guess just a lot of people would just sit on their profile page just constantly refreshing or something, would decrease the load substantially. Made the app perform far better. And let's see. Yeah. that was something. Yeah, let's see if we can find that too. That was kind of fun code. Um, that would be,
It'll be a service, I think.
yeah.
Nicholas said, "I'm totally not one
GraphQL.
of those people who refresh the HF
Pull,
page. We see
Yeah.
Nicholas causing performance issues."
it'll be the pull request service itself, I think.
Say again.
I think it'll be the pull request service as opposed to the API client directly, which is the
Pull
one
request service.
below.
Yeah. Pull request service. Yep. There we go. There's our beautiful GraphQL query right there. Cool. Yep. Rails cache.fetch. Cache key expires in 1 minute. Yeah. So this is what did the caching for those. Yeah, we would just cache the response there, and
Yeah.
that
I guess
improved the performance.
it's important to note as well that actually affected basically nothing in terms of how the app worked. Because the actual timer transition was happening on our side. So unless your pull request, got flagged as invalid in that 1 minute interval, nothing matters about the fact that got cached. So yeah, that was a great little optimization.
Yeah. Let's see.
I guess we could talk about Airtable a bit if you want.
Oh, but of course, it makes sense. The Airtable was built into it last year.
Yeah.
Chris, where did the Airtable requirement come from last? Well, not requirement. Where did you end up using Airtable last year? How did that come about?
What was it?
For context, we've had several guests on the show where we've just had rabid Airtable fanboying sessions because it's so good. So I'm very excited to hear where it came from.
Yeah. What did we use Airtable for? Oh, didn't we use it for marking the spam repositories last year?
So it's spam repositories, the FAQ page, the events page,
yes,
feature content on the homepage. Basically, all the dynamic content was Airtable last year.
And were you still around, Chris, when you took Airtable down?
Did I take Airtable down?
Well,
Hacktoberfest did twice.
Yeah. Okay. I don't think so. Yeah.
Sorry, I need to ban Hugh Rawlinson because he just said in chat, if you use Airtable to manage a list of ways to style your hair, does it become a hair table?
Oh, that's good. Yeah, no. Last year, I think the app went down twice badly during the entire event. And both times were Airtable's API just falling over because Hacktoberfest had put too much load on it.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting. I recall at one point, I think one thing to watch out for Airtable, if you put a bad value in there and your code is looking for something in a specific format, that can take the app down as well. I think I recalled that happening at one point.
Yeah, that happened as well.
And it's just it's basically your app is consuming data from Airtable and it's looking for it in a specific format, right? And then part of the advantage and the amazing part about Airtable is that you can have whatever users you want, especially non-technical users, contribute to that, right? So they're not maybe keen on following the specific format that your application needs. So that's
Can you
something
find the
to watch out
Airtable
for.
logic in here? So one of the things that drives me mad about Airtable that I've complained about on the show before is the fact that their API clients are ludicrously bare bones. They don't have for example, they don't even do rate limiting. They don't even handle the aggressive rate limiting on Airtable and this kind of thing. So I'm interested, and that was my experience with the JavaScript.
Yeah.
I'm interested in whether the Ruby one is similarly bare bones.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm just looking at this method right here and recalling that there was no caching that they had in the Airtable client, and this was a hack basically that we injected a method to have caching from Airtable into the client itself. What is this?
So I'm being trolled by chat for my speech habits again. So I'm just gonna leave the banner up, and there you go, chat. You can entertain yourself with that banner. No, I just don't have to say anything for the rest of the stream.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. What
I
do
expected
we
better
have?
from you, Nicholas.
Yeah, Faraday connection, and yes, because we at client connection. Yeah, see, this is us. Yeah, look at this. We're uh, um, we're looking into the air record table object here, and basically looking at its internals, and looking at the client and the internal method or property that it's using to store the connection logic, and we're replacing that with our own version of it that has caching in it. That's what we're doing here.
We've actually added rate limiting as well there. You see we're doing 5 requests per second maximum. So yes, to answer your question, Joe, yeah, the Airtable library has 0 caching and 0 rate limiting. It just has nice wrappers around the methods of the API.
It is wild to me, and I'll never not be angry about it. There's an engineer who used to work at GitHub, was actually on the social impact team. I don't know if you ever would have met them, Chris. Danilo Campos. But he made a whole Airtable API proxy just to and put it up on Glitch just to deal with the fact that the client is so laughably lightweight. I'll press that in chat. Okay, cool. Thank you for indulging my curiosity. It's nice to know that I'm not just missing out from using Airtable with Node.js.
Yeah. We have Airtable placeholder service. Oh, this is when we hard coded something that should have come from Airtable into just a model.
Yeah. This is basically wherever Airtable gets used, the solution to Airtable's API not only being awful with rate limits, but just not working sometimes, was wherever Airtable gets used in the app, there is a rescue that uses this placeholder service.
Rescue being the queue thing in Rails, right?
Yes, that's try except in JavaScript or something. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just if that block of code errors, rescue gets called.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how inconsistent and awful Airtable is as a production API.
So moving on to the changes you wanted to make for next year, Matt, will Airtable be staying around?
So in 2020, Airtable was significantly removed from the app. There is far less of it being used, and there is more caching in place.
Great.
We didn't break it this year, so there's that.
Break Airtable, that is.
Yes, yeah, we didn't break Airtable, so I actually have a email thread with their engineering team. So when we broke them last year, we opened a support ticket there and then. It took until March this year for them to actually go, yeah, we think it's more robust now. But yeah, we pulled a lot of Airtable stuff out this year, but bits of the app still use it. For example, the spam repository stuff still uses it this year, and it's not great. So yeah, I don't know. It's as a developer, yes, I'd love to remove it. I don't trust it really, to put it simply. But with that comes a load of work in that if I'm not going to use Airtable, I need to essentially build my own CMS in the app for that content.
It is magic,
right.
though, as Chris said, having non-technical people. Wait, was it Chris that said it? It might be attributed to the wrong person, sorry. Earlier in the show, one of you said that
Chris said that.
Yeah, perfect. It allows non-technical people to interface it really well, which is the reason I used it inside the project I worked on at GitHub was just the fact that it basically gave you the ability to arbitrarily create any admin panel that you needed without having to actually write any code, which was really nice.
Yeah. I don't know. I think if I could make feature requests, I don't know, a couple of things that would be really nice. Being able to enforce a schema in an Airtable. So when you're working with Airtable through the API, everything you're doing uses string keys, which are the literal table names, the literal view names, and the literal column names.
Yeah.
So yeah, as Chris said, if anyone goes in there and modifies that at all, your entire app just breaks. That's it, done. So that'd be really nice. And the other thing, from an API key standpoint, there is no concept of scoping an API key at all. The API key is a literal representation of that user in Airtable. That we have a dedicated Hacktoberfest account in our Airtable this year. We use that API key. That account has full write access to the entire Airtable.
Yeah. They don't
And
have a
that is a
concept of
single API
scopes.
key. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. You can give an account read or write permission individual basis, and that's as far as you have any limitations.
Yeah. And for anyone that's never worked Airtable, a base is like a collection of tables.
Yeah.
Yeah. A project.
Yeah.
Yep.
But their default way of doing it is like, hey, you as a user, just go grab your API key and start playing around. It's like, okay, cool. I'm a user with access to like every Airtable in my company's base, and now this API key is like wildly unsafe. This is an interesting discussion point for y'all. Hugh said, apologies for actually sending a message about tech, but from my JS perspective, I think I would prefer a client that just makes the requests always and doesn't cache, so that I could wrap it in and manage caching logic myself.
Okay.
Do you have opinions? Anyone have opinions? So you're talking about the fact that you had to do this caching hack with Faraday. I guess this comes from mostly me complaining that the client is very lightweight and doesn't deal with rate limiting. But
caching, I'm on the fence about, and I think most languages make it reasonably easy to cache things at whatever point you want. Write your own cache. The rate limiting aspect, though, yeah, that's it. The library is essentially a request library. It should listen to rate limit headers and behave.
I think Airtable is the only API I've ever had an issue with that in, but I think it's also because its rate limits are particularly aggressive unless you pay them big bucks.
Yeah.
He said, oh yeah, 100p, the library should handle rate limiting. Cool. Yeah. We're in agreement. We've reached consensus. Perfect. Where unto next?
I don't know. Do we want to look at the pull request and just talk about how that's changed this year?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. What are the big things you've changed this year, Matt? So obviously, like the span,
pull
like
request,
the progress model. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, like, I changed stuff around that, but yeah, I mean, all the new rules this year got implemented in the pull request model.
Right.
I don't know. So for some context, last year the database didn't store pull requests at all. Every time you wanted to go and get your profile, a request essentially went to GitHub, and we used the live data from them. So this year I changed that. we still rely on GitHub for like all the metadata around a pull request, but the application does now store a state for that pull request. I don't know, Chris, you want to pull up the pull request model from last year? It has like nothing in it. It's got like a single method that just derives a state on the fly.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. So yeah, you can see right here, like we're mostly using this as a pass-through object. And so it's just all of these methods are being delegated to the GitHub pull request, which is the API representation of it.
Yeah, and it's also, it doesn't inherit from application record here. So this is
good point. Yes.
This is just a model with no tie to the database at all. So yeah, the big change this year was the fact that they're now in the database and it has a full state machine in it.
So why was that decision made?
I don't know. I'm actually going to put the pull request, see if I justified why I did that initially. So like, I put pull requests in the database prior to knowing that we were going to change the rules. So I'm going to see if I can find out why I did that. Because I've no idea.
I'm waiting.
Where's the pull request for it? September. I've made a lot of pull requests this year.
I feel very meta searching for a pull request that contains the word pull request in it.
August 19th.
Okay.
Yeah, here we go.
Here we go.
449. If you want to jump into random one, jump then 449.
449. Okay. Let's go to this one.
I forgot to start my undervolt, said I look really focused. That's because Hugh left a comment which is going to make absolutely zero sense to Chris without having a British TV context, and so I was figuring out how best to explain the humour that Hugh had just delivered us. But I'm going to leave it. I have no way to explain that. There's a cultural divide there.
So yeah, looking at this, I never really justified why I made this change. And me 6 months on can't really tell you why I made this change. But I mean, long story short, it's a really good thing that I made this change. 'Cause it allowed us to implement all the new rules this year.
And also, just vastly reduce the number of requests you're making.
No, not really. So
Okay.
we still go to GitHub to get all the data. We don't store the GraphQL hash in the database. The pull request model literally stores the state and a timestamp. And that is it.
Mhm. I recall, like considering that last year as well, and we decided against it. But also, like just in general, the context of last year was, I think we got the spec or the initial like course of work about what was it, like 2 weeks? Or no, it was a month and like 6 weeks before October 1st. I recall.
It was
And
a
so
rush.
I recall like there was definitely some decisions that we made for expediency. There, that might have been one of them.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll say it's now in the database. So that change got made, which involved an initial state machine added as part of this pull request. Yeah, I've genuinely no idea why I decided to do it this way. There's like nothing tied to this that makes me think I did it for a specific reason. I just did it.
Well, I mean, it makes sense from just a conceptual point of view. Like, why shouldn't we have a state machine for individual programs? Oh, also, I recall there was a few edge cases from 2019 around some of the logic with like how it won. Yeah, because there was a big thing where like, where do we start the timer from? Because we had the 1 week timer like waiting period. And we ideally wanted to do it on a per pull request basis, so
That's why I did this.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah,
that's why I did this. So yeah, last year, the timer was in the user model, which made little sense.
Right.
Like, at like a program level bit of logic, it doesn't affect anything. The timer starts. The final timer that allows you to win is that fourth pull request timer. So the fact that it was in the user model didn't actually change how the mechanic of the competition worked. But yes, it was super confusing to users that the timer was on the user and not a pull request.
Yes.
So that'll be why I made this change, because there's now a timer on each pull request.
Yes, and did we make the UI so it looked like the timer was on each pull request when it's actually on the user model? Did we do that or no? Or did we?
I don't think we ever did. That was definitely like a conversation that happened. I do remember that. But no, the timer did show up.
It seems a lot. Yeah.
The timer did show up like just after the fourth pull request.
Yeah, and then there was some edge cases there where if you had what would it be if it was the last pull request and the timer started and one of them went invalid, right? It could reset. Like there's subtle changes there, or edge cases there.
Yeah.
Like in the case that one of your pull requests is marked invalid, depending if you're doing the timer, setting the timer individually on pull requests or on the user, right?
Yeah.
And,
so I mean, like now every pull request, obviously. So actually, this is one interesting thing that I noticed like halfway through October about how I did this. Even with a pull request now in the database, there is no relation between a user and a pull request. They're completely separate in the database, and the only tie between them is that data from GitHub still.
Interesting.
So each pull request is like completely isolated on its own. So if one pull request, becomes invalid, its state changes and its timer changes, but nothing else gets directly changed. Though obviously the user then might transition state once that gets checked.
Yeah, and then so I assume that also that now the like winning condition just tallies up and sees like, okay, are there 4 pull requests that are in the, I guess, what would the state name be?
It's
Um,
eligible.
Eligible. Great. Yep.
Yeah.
That are in an eligible state. Yeah.
So actually,
Yeah, that's
like, look at this
interesting. Yeah,
diff. It's
because
actually nice and simple to understand because the new diff is even worse.
yeah.
So if you diffed last year against master, obviously the pull request model has evolved significantly beyond this pull request here. So this is
Right.
like the pull request model with last year's rules implemented,
Right.
and then all the
Yeah.
rules changed again this year.
Right. Yeah, interesting. So we could do that then, huh? Pull this up.
Oh, I should say, like, a lot of my work on the app this year was fixing the specs.
Fixing specs.
Yeah. So, like,
Interesting.
I don't know. That's one other, I don't know, pet peeve. Like with documentation.
Uh-huh.
The spec suite didn't stub or mock GitHub's API at all. It relied on cassettes for everything.
Oh, yeah, sure. Uh-huh.
Which
So
is
you're not a fan of VCR then?
well, I am in like a sensible.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. I found this like a really odd context for VCR to be used.
Uh-huh.
Because if I had to, like, when I did this change, a lot of the stuff that happened in the specs around pull request changed,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Yeah.
couldn't just go and re-record the VCRs because they, at the time they were recorded, relied on live GitHub data that no longer existed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the entire spec suite basically got rewritten this year to have everything stubbed.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think in a lot of ways, I also prefer to use WebMock and just putting the model there rather than VCR. Um, yeah, just about for that reason. Or I feel as though uh, 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 it gives you just better control or just insight into what you're actually responding with.
Yeah.
And it's just right there in the test. It's not hidden away in these kind of, because you're not really supposed to handle anything with the cassette files, right? It's just a recording
Yeah, so you don't
of
want to ever
that.
look at them really.
Right. Yeah.
Like, depending on
So
actually what request you record, sometimes it even stores the response in like a binary format.
yeah.
You physically cannot touch that response, which is
Yeah.
just a pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like, in the context of last year, it kind of made sense, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe you can talk a bit more to this, but my understanding was very much this app was kind of written specifically with like 2019 in mind. I don't know on your end how much kind of like was there. This is going to be used in future years.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, I think part of it was, I guess we were uh, kind of thinking that we would continue to develop the app, but that's not what happened. But also, um, yeah, I mean, a lot of uh, it was we were just focused on getting to 2019 up and running quickly, right? That was
Yeah.
really
Yeah, which I mean, like, massive props because in 6 weeks you got Hacktoberfest 2019 built from the ground up and it worked.
Yeah, and yeah. It's also part of the perspective of Raise too is that, like, if you're starting a software consultancy, normally you'd want to go and hire the most experienced developers that you could find, right? And in this case, we've said we're purposely doing this in hard mode, like whereas yeah, people that need more support. Yeah.
And using it as part of a teaching project, which is super neat.
Yep.
I don't know. I thought that kind of. I don't know. It didn't actually feel like you were working with inexperienced developers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, like that's from my perspective of like I wasn't heavily involved in development last year, but it, everything felt like people knew what they were doing, and it all felt very professional.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's great though too, because Hacktoberfest was like kind of towards the end, and we had worked on a number of Rails projects before. So I mean, yeah.
I mean, like,
really glad you had that impression.
y'all had worked on community as well for a while, so
Yes.
yeah, that was fun. But I don't know. I think equally though, like the fact that it was also all developed on GitHub, private at the time, but is now open source. You can go and look through all the pull requests. The reviews that were being given were amazing. Like, if you want some learning material for Ruby, the pull request reviews that exist here are actually like really useful.
Yeah, great.
I think there's probably still some left open from last year we've not got around to.
Could be. So you think specifically last year was when there were good reviews then too?
Yeah, well, like from yourself and John especially, just kind of reviewing all the team's work. I don't know. I found that as someone at the time who knew very little Ruby as well, I don't know. I found it quite a useful learning experience.
Yeah, great.
Like secondary learning. I don't know. Is that a thing?
It can be.
I'm still getting distracted by this terrible Jackal pull request someone just sent to me now. It's broken my brain. Okay, cool. So, do we, having now reviewed the area where like the biggest change happened, is there anything else we want to talk about on this app, or shall we steer to a conclusion?
I don't know. I actually have one.
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
I have one question, Chris. Because one actually came up when we were looking at deploying it this year. Sidekick Enterprise was used last year, and we couldn't find really any context on why that was chosen as opposed to rolling our own.
Yeah. So that was for the major reason for that was for the time-bound jobs to be fired off.
Yeah.
There's a few community gems that that handle this as well. It doesn't come. We just thought it was the better choice, though, for handling all our cron-related workers that needed to be run.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what we used this year. Maybe look in the gem file.
I thought Sidekick was just like an open source library. I didn't even realize it had a company in it.
Yes, it's an interesting business model because it's definitely a great open source product, but then there are a few like additional pay for features on top of that helps the creator support it for this full-time work.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I forgot to start my undervolt. Asked, are you using a CSS framework for the front end?
A CSS framework for the front end.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all handwritten Sass. So yeah, there is like the Sass being used, so it all gets compiled. But yeah, there's no actual framework. It's all custom by hand.
Very cool.
I don't know, should we give some context on what Sidekick is for someone that's not used it before?
Yeah, someone in the chat did think you were saying psychic, as in like mind reading powers.
Sure. So I can take that, or do you want to take that, Matt?
Yeah, for Chris.
All right. Sidekick is a way to handle like distributed tasks in Ruby. Just a reminder, Ruby sucks on like parallelism. It really does. And so if you want to handle things simultaneously, or like in like split it off to jobs that'll be processed like with many of them at the same time, you could use Sidekick to do that. One of the real common ways that it's used is to take time-consuming things out of a response cycle. So if you hit send a web request to the Rails server, and then it wants to respond with the HTML and whatever as quickly as possible, right, to get that response time down. But if you have something that's really computationally intensive, a really common technique with Rails is to move that computationally expensive work into a worker and just fire the job off asynchronously so that it happens asynchronously. And then it doesn't, basically that time doesn't get included in the response, doesn't get added to the response cycle. It's just a really common thing that happens in Rails.
Yeah, I guess the other big use of it in Hacktoberfest is those kind of cron scheduled tasks, which I did check. We're using Sidekick Scheduler to do it this year. So yeah, so like in Hacktoberfest, there's a couple of jobs, but the main one, every 2 hours, the app cycles through every single user and gets all their pull requests and checks the state that user should be in. Which is like a really important mechanic to Hacktoberfest. So you can register on like the first day of Hacktoberfest and never look at the app again until the last day, and you will win. The app will do all that for you in the background, thanks to that scheduled job.
Great. I need to complete my onboarding.
Have you not signed up yet, Joe?
Well, I started signing up in the middle of that stream, and then your app made me watch the entire video. How's that done, by the way? Where's that done? Show me that piece of code that made me have to abort the sign up in the middle of the stream.
I don't actually know because I didn't write that. There'll be some JavaScript for it somewhere. Yeah. There's a registration JavaScript file.
So no, I haven't finished signing up, but also like the only things I recently have pull requests for are, they're not technically my repos, they're in an organization I contribute to, but it still feels like cheating. Getting Hacktoberfest to my own docs site is probably not okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
That's Hacktoberfest.
Yeah, well thank you both so much for having this back and forth. So go on, Chris.
Oh, yeah, actually, I just wanted to mention one other thing, like just a key takeaway of something that I learned for Hacktoberfest too last year, which was we had made the mistake at one point of, or I had made the mistake of putting a production IP address in one of the pull requests. And that was when we were, Hacktoberfest was originally closed source before we open sourced it, right? We always knew we were going to open source it, but and during this, basically we went through, and something really important to know is if you put like sensitive information in a pull request on GitHub, there's really like no way to permanently remove that information.
Because even if you edit it, you then get it in like the history. It says like you changed blah to blah, right?
Yes.
I should put it, even if you delete a pull request, that commit hash still exists on GitHub in the realms of their servers.
Oh, sorry, I thought Chris was talking about like something that was in like the actual pull request body, not in the not even in the commit.
We're talking about the commit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, that's just a really important thing to know, because really that we didn't have any other option than to actually change the production servers that we were using in order to create or basically maintain our production history, so that wasn't considered secret any information anymore.
Wow.
Right.
Wild.
I think there's also a lot of API keys that got committed to this repository at different points in its history.
Yeah.
I remember like
that could be too.
As part of the open sourcing process, we basically went through and rolled every single API key involved.
Well, that's bad practice, even if it's going to be a private repo. Was like the what was the big key leak like 2 or 3 years ago that prompted GitHub to make the public key scanning a feature that was available for everyone, not just enterprise. And that was in a private repo where like the repo remained private. The reason that got leaked is because like someone got access to the repo and thus got the keys. So even in private repos, they recommend you don't put keys in them anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. Much as I very much, I hate putting keys in private repos. Yeah. I don't know.
GitHub Secret Story just made that easier, at least.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. But I don't know. It felt very on theme with the whole Hacktoberfest thing. This
Right.
thing is, I don't
Make
know.
it
One way
work.
to describe it
Ship
is
it.
one massive rushed bodge job to make it
Right.
work. I don't know. I feel like committing API keys into the repository is just
Yeah.
on theme.
You should set a new constraint where the only work that can be done for the Hacktoberfest app is within the 4 PR count during a Hacktoberfest, and other than that, nothing can be done. So make you
That'd be
prepare a
rough.
year in advance. Cool, awesome, rad. So let me drop the screen share. Before we leave and end the show and end the month, is there anything else either of you want to say or throw out there or talk about?
I don't know. Let me pull up a timer. I'm gonna tell you how long
Timer?
we've got left in Hacktoberfest.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
See.
Chris, to ask you this question that got asked at the beginning, folks who've signed up for Raise.dev and have had their kickoff call and are not yet matched with a coach, my answer at the beginning was accurate, right? That we're working to match them and they should hang tight, but we're still working through that process.
Exactly. Yes.
Perfect.
Quite true.
Awesome. Wonderful. And equally, saying a warning I haven't given for a while. If you sign up and get you're in the waiting list sign, again, we are working for a sizable waiting list, and that's not like a fake, oh, hey, we're only accepting 1,000 people, then the rest of you can go away until we go full release. That is we match people with actual coaches, you have actual chats. That is a process that all takes time on either ends. As soon as we have availability, we will get you matched. Do not worry. You found timer, Matt?
Yeah. So if you're still wanting to win Hacktoberfest, you have 37 hours and about 40 minutes to get your 4 pull
37
requests.
hours and 40 minutes.
You got to get your 4 pull requests submitted, but not only do they need to be submitted, they need to be accepted by a maintainer.
Yeah, and
So they need
accepted
to be-
means either merged or with the label, right?
So merged or overall, it has an approving review.
Okay.
So I don't know. That's confused some people. Not just that a maintainer has approved it. That has to be the overall review on the entire pull request is that it's approved. If a maintainer approves and another one requests changes,
Yeah.
overall there's changes requested.
Okay.
So overall it needs to be approved or the Hacktoberfest accepted label.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome.
And to that point, the merge and approve only works in a participating repository, so the repository has to have the Hacktoberfest topic. If you use the label, that's on a pull request. Any pull request on a public repository on GitHub can be individually opted in with that label.
We need a flowchart, Matt.
I have a flowchart. I gave it to the. Are you in? Have you seen the Python Discord?
No. Python has a
okay.
Discord?
Yeah, they have a massive Discord. They have a Hacktoberfest bot in there that.
Wait, so you put a flowchart in a different Discord and not in the Hacktoberfest Discord?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't in that Discord. They had a pull request open to update their bot to
I
have
see.
the new rules,
I see.
and I've made them a flowchart because none of them can understand the logic.
Right, I see.
But I will drop it in our Discord afterwards because yes, I
Perfect.
have a flowchart of how everything works.
There was something else I was going to say that I completely forgot. Oh, it was someone asked me for the review of the SteelSeries headphones, and I had to take my headphones off to see if they were talking about my headphones. And they were. These are good headphones. Buy these headphones. I very much like these headphones. These are the Arctic 7s or something like that. They're good headphones. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you both. Thank you for giving us that final rundown, those final 37 hours. Because though this show is over, Hacktoberfest is not over. You still have over a day and a bit. But thank you both for spending this last show with us and for talking a little bit about the history of the app that makes it all happen. Yeah, that was super interesting. And also, Chris will be party to a lot more of this as we get into what post Hacktoberfest for the show looks like. But every time we do something like this, I'm like, that's something we should do on the show again. And I think showing people just an old repo and telling them to do archaeology on it is pretty interesting.
I don't know. I think that fits in quite well with your will it build idea as well.
Oh yeah, Chris, have you heard this one yet?
It's a great idea. I love it. Yeah.
You could do like a will it build right at the start and then just go and.
Well,
do
so
some
I'm in two
archaeology
minds
now.
about will it build. Like, part of me really wants it to just be like the guest comes on the show, we give them a repo, we ask them will it build, they run the command, and we say yes or no, and then move on with no further context. Part of me really wants to do that, but it would obviously be far more educational if we try and work out why it won't build.
I think it would fit quite well into the whole archaeology thing, like instruct the guest not to look at their code before they come on the show.
Right.
So the first thing is a genuine will it build, but then the rest of the show is actually just.
Well, no,
digging through
the
that
way
old
you
code.
do that is I go to their GitHub and I choose the repo and don't tell them, and then they come on, and I'm like, "This spin the wheel."
Oh, that'd be rough.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you both so much, and thank you all to the viewers. I will backstage you two now and do the outro. But again, thank you both for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you both.
Catch you later.
Good evening.
All right, thank you again, Chris and Matt, and thank you all in the chat for being so lovely and so active on our final chat and for bullying me. It's much appreciated. And again, you've all been awesome this month. As I said, a lot of the names in the chat are people I recognise who've been hanging out with us the entire month. So thank you so much for that. You've been super great, and this has been an experiment for us because I've definitely never streamed this much. Ray's was brand new. Sorry, I need to sort my hair out. Woo. There we go. The stream is resumed. I've never streamed this much. Ray's didn't exist before this month, so this has been a huge experiment for us, and so it's been great hanging out with y'all and getting to talk to you about open source and Hacktoberfest, but also what you want to see on these shows. That's been super good. So I said we will be back after this month. We're not sure on the schedule yet, but we will get that to you as soon as we can. The best way to keep up to date with what we're doing and when we're coming back is to follow us at Raised Devs on Twitter. We're Raised Devs on Twitter. We're Raised Devs on Twitch. You can drop us the love heart, hit the bell. You'll get notifications when we go live. So that'll be the best way to keep up to date with what we're doing. And obviously on Twitter, we'll be tweeting a lot. Just to let you know, as we have over 80 hours of recorded Twitch streams from this month. They will disappear from our Twitch page after 2 weeks. So 2 weeks after the show has been live, it will be gone from our Twitch page. So if there was anything you've seen recently that you really want to watch, go watch it. In the meantime, I will be getting the raw recordings all uploaded to YouTube. So there'll be the whole show length, and then we'll be working to cut those up into highlights so that you don't have to listen to 20 minutes of me ramble about the schedule before you get into the show. So we'll be working on that. So don't worry, you're not going to miss anything. If there's anything you want to watch in the short time, go watch it, but we will be getting it onto YouTube. It just might take us a little while because there is over 80 hours of it, and my internet's fast, but it's not that fast, and we have to edit it and all that kind of stuff. So do bear with us. If there's anything in particular that you want to see sooner rather than later, let us know. Let us know on Twitter. Let us know in many Discords, and we'll try and get that uploaded for you so you can refer to that or link to that. Perfect. So that is it. That is the month. Thank you all very much. I'm going to sleep for a million years. But we'll see you sometime next week. I believe our first stream next week will be John doing some code. I'm tempted to do a series where John teaches me Ruby on Rails, but I don't know if we'd murder each other, so we'll see whether that happens. But anyway, I'll see you next week. Have a lovely weekend. Good luck completing Hacktoberfest if you haven't already. Again, thank you all so much, and we will see you whenever we see you. Farewell.